Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. This is Mike from DynamicPoint. Today, we're going to be going through processing employee expenses using Teams, as well as the rest of Office 365. I'll give it about one more minute or so before we get started. And again, thank you so much for joining and everyone's time today. I appreciate it. Okay, I'm showing 1 after the hour. So let's go ahead and get started. We have a lot to get through today. Again, I appreciate everyone being here and taking a half hour out of your day. We will be spending the next 30 minutes looking at Office 365 functionality, including Teams, and how that could be used for managing employee expenses. So that's the goal of today. The format of the meeting, we'll be going through both Office 365 and just sort of standard functionality that's provided by Microsoft, as well as we have an application that gets added to the Office 365 ecosystem that adds to the overall solution as well. So some stuff is obviously specific to our product, and others is just general Office 365 functionality that, if anything else, will hopefully give you some tools and tricks of how you could use that platform for managing employee expenses. A few logistics. I do review the questions and chat as I go through the next 30 minutes. So if you have anything, please go ahead and send it. I'll do my best to take little breaths along the way and look at the chat and questions if you have anything, and address them on the call. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So quick introduction, who am I? My name is Mike. I head up business development for DynamicPoint. And what we do as a company, as I mentioned, is we basically create apps on the Office 365 framework. For those of you who are familiar with this framework, that makes probably perfect sense. For those of you who are not familiar with this framework, it is basically a whole platform for not only products that Microsoft offers, but for building apps like ours. And my best analogy that I've been able to come up with in the past 10 years of doing this is it's very similar to like a mobile app platform. I'm sure we've all installed apps on our mobile phone, and when you do, it asks you all these questions. Can I use your camera and location? And we probably say yes to all of them and don't read them. But what that is that product or that app leveraging this platform that is provided by, in that case, your iPhone or Android. And Microsoft provides this whole ecosystem for companies like us that develop products, obviously not for consumers, but for businesses. So that is what we do. We create products within this framework. We've been around a little bit longer than this framework has existed. So we used to create products on top of SharePoint. And then our history is about 7 years or so ago, 6 years ago, we migrated all of our products to Office 365. So I'm getting one question here that you don't have any audio. So I'm hoping everyone could hear me. If it's just one person, I'll go ahead and keep going. If it's everyone, then of course I want to address that before going any further. So if everyone else is having issues, please let me know, or if it's just one person, I'll go ahead and send out the recording later. So I'm not getting any other complaints, so we'll keep rolling. All right, as far as our suite of products, our suite of products basically entails 3 applications currently. And the one that we are focused on today, of course, is this last one here. So this expense management product will be our focus today. Oops, I'm sorry. We also offer a portal product as well as invoice automation. Those will not be the scope of today's session. Again, we're focused on this one. And really the scope of this application or the functionality is the capturing of employee expenses, right? Capturing their receipts. Obviously, we want some workflow associated to this for routing and approval, some coding to GL accounts, and ultimately we want these expense reports to create a transaction in our ERP application being the end goal, such that we could pay this employee and then record any of their associated expenses to the proper GL accounts and have them reflected within our accounting or our ERP application. So we do integrate with several, most specifically the Microsoft Dynamics products we have covered, as well as other leading ERP applications. If you're interested, there's an integration page on our website that'll show you all of those that we've integrated with before. So that's the focus of our agenda today. So first of all, let's start with how to capture employee expenses, right? So as part of this process, the first step is I'm out buying things for the company or incurring these expenses on a corporate credit card, and I need to capture these receipts. Right, that's the first step in the process. I'm either buying something or I'm, out to dinner or whatever the case may be, and I want to capture that receipt such that I can now have a record of it that will ultimately be used for my reimbursement. And what Microsoft has provided here is a plethora of options of how I could capture those receipts. Now, given we're talking about employees, the mobile options, generally speaking, are the more popular in that they're, incurring these expenses while not in front of the computer. Now, that's not always the case. So there are several options that are more, desktop specific. But the two mobile ones is a mobile upload. And what this is leveraging, if you're familiar with this icon, is Microsoft gives us this OneDrive app that is integrated with SharePoint libraries. So I could simply take pictures of receipts from my phone and they get stored to these libraries. So we'll sort of call that as option one, right? Option two here is I have a ability to create a Power App, of which I'll demonstrate one, to not only capture receipts, but maybe I want to have a little bit more functionality. Maybe I want my employees to assign projects or assign coding to them or pick expense types or have a little bit more involvement when that receipt gets captured as opposed to a simple upload. We'll also show that on the Teams interface. I'll be demonstrating that from the desktop, but of course Teams has a mobile app as well. So I'll show you how you could capture those receipts directly from your desktop. So we'll show that as number 3. And then last but not least, if I just want to do it from my browser, I can most certainly do that as well. We'll call that option 4. So this is, the first step in leveraging this Power Platform, as it's called, or Office 365, is that we want to capture those receipts. And then after we go through the capture process, we'll then focus to what do I do with those then, right? Like how does that get created on an expense report? How does this, get routed for approval and workflow? And then ultimately, like I said, that last step is we want to go ahead and bring that in as a transaction such that it could be paid. So, with no further ado, let's go ahead and look at receipt capture options. So the first option that I promised was a mobile upload. So what I'm going to do here is, I should have my phone here somewhere. If not, I gotta reshare it. I apologize, it looks like it's gone to sleep on me. All right, bear with me. I had it open and then it went to sleep. So I'll go ahead and open up my phone again. And we are going to start with that first option, which is taking a picture. Let me try that again. If this doesn't work, I have a backup, but I'd prefer to show it to you on my phone. Okay, now it seems like it's behaving. Sorry for the delay there. You should see my phone. Okay, so the first one we wanted to start with was the simple upload. And what I have on my phone is, if I go to my DynamicPoint apps here, which I could show you in a second. DynamicPoint, you will see a OneDrive app, right? So OneDrive allows me to hook up to SharePoint libraries and have a simple process to take a picture of a file, in this case, an employee receipt, and upload that directly into this library. So that's what I'm gonna do. So let's go ahead and take a picture. I have a receipt here on my desk. We'll go ahead and snapshot that. So as you can see, the OneDrive app is pretty cool. It's cropping out my desk. It's zooming in on the picture there. And then I could go ahead and confirm this. So it's obviously got rid of all the background, which is a nice thing. And then I could hit done. And where that's going to go, as you can see, my options are saving this to SharePoint libraries. So I'm gonna go ahead and save it to my mobile expense receipt. There's a specific reason I'm saving it to this library, and you'll see it here in a second. So this attachment, of course, appears in this library, which I also have up on my screen. And if I were to refresh my screen, you can see it's captured, right? So now, if nothing else, I have a capture of that receipt and who created it, right? It was created by the DynamicPoint demo account. But a little bit more is going on. As you can note here, I have all kinds of fields that I've identified, such as vendor name, category, date, total, etc., that are not yet populated. And the reason they're not yet populated is when I capture this expense receipt, it's going to be submitted to an OCR process. And it'll take a second or two, but what we'll see is all of the results of the OCR process will populate these columns in this library. So it may take a minute or two, I might have to come back to it, but you'll see all of these results come through from OCR. So we'll come back, we'll give it a second. It usually takes a minute or two. Oh, there it is. Okay, my last attempt worked. So now you can see here's all of the fields that OCR was able to recognize. It categorized this, it gave me a vendor name, it gave me a date, etc. So pretty cool, right? If nothing else, I've captured an employee's receipt. I've using an Office 365 integrated OCR tool with this library. So in addition to me capturing it and simply uploading it, it's now classified it. It's captured the vendor name, the amount, etc. Right? So pretty neat. So that was just one way. That was just a simple mobile upload option. But let's go, we promised Teams, so let's do that same thing from Teams. So Teams, of course, has integrations with SharePoint libraries as well. And I am showing that same library here in my Teams interface. So there's that same scan, of which again, I could go ahead and either upload a receipt, or if I was using this on my mobile app, I could do the same thing there, right? Just another way of getting that receipt into that library such that we could perform OCR on it. So let's go ahead and pick a different one. And boom, of course, it's been now uploaded. If I were to go back here and of course refresh it, it's all going into this same spot. And then I'm not going to wait for this one, but it's also going to be submitted to OCR, and I'll see the results of the OCR process there as well. So option 2, right? The difference, not a lot, maybe one's a little bit more mobile friendly and I'm just taking a picture of it. The other is, on the Teams interface, which I think most of us are probably using Teams on a desktop. But again, it's just another way for me to capture that receipt. So let's keep moving on with more and more options, right? You have all these choices, and which one you want is sort of up to you as far as your preference. So I'm going to bring over my screen again, and this time I'm going to use a Power App. Now the Power App, I could give it a little bit, more functionality associated to it. So as opposed to just submitting receipts, which maybe, if that's all your employees are caring about, then that first option is easier, but maybe I want them to code it and do a little bit more, involvement with these receipts as they get uploaded. So here you can see I actually have 3 tabs. I have an expense items, I have an auto items, and I'm showing credit card transactions. So let's start on the first one, the expense items. I could go ahead and create a new item. And here I could do such things as, fill out vendor information, as well as you could see drop downs for classifications such as categories. So we'll say we went out to a nice dinner at Denny's or something. We'll go ahead and pick a category of meals, put in a cost associated to it, and then again, be able to take a photo. So we'll go ahead and take a picture of that and upload it. And save. So we'll create an expense item. You can see that was saved successfully. I could go ahead and create an auto item, in other words, reimbursement for travel. So we could say we went from home to the office, and we went something like 20 miles, and save that guy. And then the last item is credit card transactions. So the credit card transactions are a little different than the first two because these are already there. In other words, they're coming in from a automatic credit card feed to get all those transactions in and allow me to classify them or substantiate them with additional attachments such as receipts. So on like this Embassy Suites one, if I were to pick this guy, the transaction's already there. Maybe I need to classify it or put it to a given project or whatever, or added an additional receipt. But by saving this, I'm just adding more detail to it, and then I have the ability to submit it and get it out of my queue. So if I were to submit this guy, you'll see that it actually disappears and is no longer in my quote unquote open queue for coding. So again, a different option, right? All going into the same place. Everything I'm doing is going into that SharePoint library. It's just the method gives me a little bit different control options, again, based on your business process. If I need to specify a project and whatever else, and you want me to interact with this receipt more before I upload it, a Power App is a very powerful tool because I could put all those fields there and require them. So, and then the last option, and probably the most obvious one, is that I could of course just upload directly to that library, right? So if I wanted to go in here and hit upload or drag and drop or whatever, I can most certainly do that as well. So I can interact directly with that library, of course, from a browser, and this drag and drop that receipt. So those were all the options from a submission standpoint. So if I were to go back to my PowerPoint and share that. So we've covered a few here, right? We covered the mobile app, or the mobile upload, we covered the app, we covered the Teams ability, and as well as just doing it from a browser. And as I mentioned, all of those are sort of going into the same place. They're all going into a repository that's being provided by an Office 365 SharePoint library. And in addition to capturing the actual attachment, we're performing OCR to get all kinds of data out of that receipt. What was the vendor, what was the amount, what was the tax amount, etc. Right, so all those are just different, but basically accomplishing the same thing. So if we were to move on in this presentation here, then we start talking about, okay, now that we have these receipts, what do we do with them, right? So the first step here is, capturing it, which we've went through with a lot of detail. Then, what's going on in the background and what our app is providing is we're actually automatically creating a report. And we have these concept of templates and auto creations that's taking all of these receipts coming in from these various methods and adding them to an automatic created expense report. And these expense reports could be created, ad hocly based on the fact that I uploaded a receipt, or if I'm submitting them weekly, I could have them obviously created on a weekly or some time period basis. But it's capturing all of these receipts, and it's doing through this templates, it's adding the contact or the financial details that'll ultimately be needed before this is going to create a transaction in my accounting system. So this is an important step, right? The first step is more of the end user capturing all this data, but then when the report creation is, that's really where I'm getting into the accounting aspects and more of the heavy lifting from the financial details. And then of course I want to review this, right? I have this report that's automatically been created for me, and maybe it needs to go to a manager for approval or a project managers, etc., before it gets integrated into my accounting system. So let's go through that really quick. And let's get out of here again. And we'll discard that. And we're going to go now to our Office 365 based SharePoint app. And if I were to click on this expense report processing, what you'll see is my submission of those receipts has created a report for me. And in addition to creating this report, it's added all of this detail. So an employee doesn't really have to quote unquote go in here and concern themselves with this unless they want to, but I'm just showing you, what ultimately is going on and what the app is doing is it's capturing all these different input methods. And in addition to that, it's automatically adding the line items to an overall container in the form of an expense report. And in addition, of course, we're capturing all those receipts that have been submitted. So that's the one I did from my mobile phone. We're capturing the mileage associated to it and obviously calculating a reimbursement rate. And the credit card transaction to the Embassy Suites has been added, etc. So now I have a report that's automatically been created. I'm defining how much is credit card total because I'm probably not going to reimburse the employee for that if it's incurred on a credit card, the reimbursement total, etc. So now I have all these details, and this report can be automatically submitted for workflow, right? Or I could obviously click the button and submit it. Since we're going through it on the demo, I'm going to go ahead and click this now, which is going to route this for approval. So if I were to update my filter here, you'll see that this is now going through, oops, I'm sorry, wrong status, an approval process. So I can see it's now under review. And that approval process, of course, is going to use our friend Power Automate to route that to the appropriate people for approval. So if I go to my email here, and now pretending to be a manager, so not the employee, I now have an action that has been provided by Power Automate to review this report. And you can see here, I could obviously approve or reject it, and I could click on this report, which opens up a full review form that gives me all of the details of the report. I have an audit log, etc. Right? So I could see not only all the details and the attachments associated to it, but I could also potentially even edit it as it's going through the review process, depending on your reviewer permissions. So that one I open up from email, but as we mentioned, we're looking at Teams today. So if I go ahead and open up Teams, our friends at Microsoft have given us a Power Automate app called, rightfully so, I guess, Approvals, that shows me all of the tasks that are now assigned to me, right? So if I go here, I have that same task that I can manage from Teams. So I have that same report, I have the link to go review it, and I could approve or reject it or reassign it and add any comments right here. As well as you can see, we have the ability to put data from the report, such as the total, the amount, descriptions, and things like that. So if I don't want to do that extra click and go into the details, maybe I could just get enough of the gist to confirm it directly from the actual notification. So that was another option, right? Again, that same app, as you've probably guessed, or maybe there's a lot of different ways to do all this. There is a a Power Automate app on the phone as well. So I could look at all of my, tasks from my phone and approve them or reject them directly from there. So let's go ahead and go back to the email option, and I'm gonna say, this looks good. And we'll submit it. So again, moving on in the process, now I have my managerial review. Could obviously go to more reviewers if I needed to, but for the sake of keeping today's demo quick and more straightforward, I'm only requiring a single approval process. So as you can see here, I just got another email saying, hey, my report's been approved and it is now no longer in workflow. What that means for me is if I refresh this screen, we'll actually see that the status of this report is going to approved complete, which that means we've integrated it with an ERP application, right? So all of these transactions have been integrated in an ERP application for payment. And I could see all of the details of this report. I could see, the audit log of each step in the workflow. I could see the notes that were captured from a review process. Here again is the audit log. Depending on the ERP application, I would see the details of the transaction that just got created in the ERP product. So going back to our process, I'll go ahead and bring that slide up again just so we could recap really quick. What we have seen here was the capture, right? Using the various methods of Office 365, the OneDrive app, the mobile application, Teams, etc. The report creation we did automatically, right? And that was because I had all these submitted receipts submitted to this library or this, bucket, if you will, or folder. We then automatically created a report which brought in the financial elements, the GL account assignments, the projects, the dimensions, and all of the things that are required before this last and final step, the integration. And then in between there, we routed it for approval such that I could get the appropriate people to weigh in to say, hey, does this expense report look valid? Does the attachments look correct and everything else from a confirmation perspective to make sure that's ready to integrate with the ERP transaction for posting and payment. So that was it for the sake of today. According to my watch, we're right about at time. So I will go ahead and thank you all so much for joining. If you have any questions on any of this, I've put my contact information below, as well as we'll be following up with a recording of the presentation and an email with my contact details. So I want to thank everyone's time for joining. I very much appreciate you taking the time out of your day, and have a great rest of your Wednesday. Thank you so much.